You're welcome back. You're watching Business Morning, coming to you live from Channels Television here in Lagos. We've been talking about the money markets for 2014, and Wali Abi, the Executive Secretary, Financial Markets Dealers Association, has been our guest. Thank you.
Pleasure.
For still being a part of the show. Let's move quickly to what we should expect for 2015. Based on what had happened last year and, of course, toward the end of the year, I want to start on the issue of foreign exchange market again, because we talked about that before we went on break. How do you think the impact of the directives, because banks were told not to hold foreign currencies beyond certain days, how do you think that would impact the market, especially the first quarter of the year, if that directive is still on?
One thing about that that particular circular was that it mentioned that it's a temporary measure. How soon? I'm not too sure anyone can define that until the fundamentals, the fundamentals change. And what is the major fundamental in Nigeria? The global oil price. And from the look of things, against the prediction that by an expert that it might even go below $50 per barrel, then that I can say that will be quite challenging. Unfortunately for us in Nigeria, we like to consume what we don't produce and produce what we don't consume. So our prices are determined by the international market in terms of our export. And it's going to be a tough year. There's no doubt about that, given the fact that we've had much gap between what we should have as fiscal infrastructure, even social infrastructure as well, and where we're expected to be. And so with the impact of oil price on our capital budget, for instance, then obviously it's going to be tough for every sector of the economy and every individual. So what it requires is that we have to now take a total review and overhaul the entire economy, in terms of to ensure there's a limit to the negative impact that this oil price, might bring upon Nigeria and Nigeria's economy. I mean, you are aware of the fact that some state governments have not even paid salaries a few months back. So it's going to be quite, it's going to be dramatic. However, what is important is for us to recognize that as business entities and as individuals, and then try to shape the direction, in terms of speed and in terms of what we do.
In terms of shaping the direction, well, we do not really know. We're just trying to project here. What direction do you think the rates would take? You've talked about oil prices and the allocation to the states may also drop further. And because we've had an issue of having to support them by distributing some money from the excess crude account, that has been dropping as well. Yes. So how do you think all of this development would affect the markets in terms of the liquidity that will be available and the rates at which the banks would want to trade among themselves?
Well, of course, there will be generally a lower amount of liquidity, a lower quantum of liquidity in the system as a whole. However, I mean, don't forget that demand for funds, because again, the other side is that there are opportunities at this point in time. Opportunities for businesses, for instance, that focus on that focus on production, and I mean, with a view to exporting, because prices will be relatively cheaper.
Talking about devaluation now, that's one of the impacts of
Yes, it will be generally be cheaper in Nigeria.
How do you think that exports can be improved upon, except for some sectors that are into packaging of products, but who are into manufacturing and all of those things, what kind of challenges do you think they will have to deal with? Yes, our export is now cheaper by the fact that we devalued our currency, but what level of production do we undertake? Are we going to be undertaking going by our inadequate infrastructure in the country and the opportunities? How do we, take advantage of the opportunity that we now have to now export more and, our goods are now cheaper?
Yeah. Well, let me say this. I think the challenge of infrastructure will still be there and it will remain. However, the question is, there are industries, or let me say, business entities that have actually found solutions, that help to address some of the challenges they face. Take a look at power, for instance. I'm not too sure any of the major businesses, actually the real sector actually depend on power from the main grid. You take a look at Dangote, you take a look at all the multinationals that are available, the AAA companies. I'm not too sure they depend on. Yes, that drives their costs higher, but because the devaluation, or which you mentioned now, obviously, relatively, will, in terms of their pricing, you discover that their products are likely to be relatively cheaper when you compare it with those that are produced elsewhere, especially in the developed economies. However, the opportunities are not even what I look at. I rather look at opportunities for the small-scale producers and then the small-scale enterprises that could produce. For instance, take a look at agriculture, in which case the opportunities have been clearly identified in Nigeria. But it is not about just exporting raw produce. No. There will be opportunities for processing, and then the opportunities for marketing. I think those are the areas that it's a chain. There's a value chain there. So aside from those who produce, which I believe that we need to add value locally, as against just sending those raw materials. The areas that we have opportunities. Okay,
what interest rate direction should we expect this year? Of course, we know that the central bank meets from time to time, and what impacts would that make on the money market?
Cost of funds will generally be higher, and so we're likely to see a higher cost of funds generally, even both in the real sector and then in the interbank market. Of course, the moment you have a higher MPR and you have the review of cash reserve, obviously there is an immediate impact on the money market in terms of higher rates. Those who borrow, therefore, might have to part more, with a higher level of interest. However, if we focus more internally, as opposed to focus more on just in imports, ultimately, that might have to change the equation. The reality was that there had been so much reliance and dependence on oil, to the extent that nobody wanted to do any other thing other than to say, look, how can I just fit into any of this value chain in this oil economy without necessarily having to add value in the real sense of it. So if we're able to eliminate some of those leakages, if we're able to eliminate some of those leakages, we're able to also address the issue of corruption. We're able to ensure that whatever is budgeted is actually spent on adding value, to the state of our infrastructure. Then all of those might. That is not in the short term, but in the medium term, I think this might be a blessing in disguise. That is, if we are really serious about restructuring the economy and not just paying lip service to it. Otherwise, if the oil reverses tomorrow and then you see Nigerians, we go back to the same our same old ways, because these lessons have been there over the years. But how much of those have we actually learned in order to possibly forge ahead? Very little.
Okay, on a final note, because our
Yes.
time is up, this is an election year,
Yes.
and usually in an election year, a lot of money has been spent. Of course, some of this money we have to pass through the banks,
Yes.
and of course have some kind of impact on the interest rates among the banks.
Yes.
How do you think that is going to play out this year?
Well, election is just a few months away. I think after the election, I think, the election will possibly end by the first quarter, and then by May, the new government might have to come in, either represented by the present party or any other party. But what is important is that either you are in party A or you are in party B, the Nigerian economy is so crucial to everybody.
Okay.
And I think any government will want to ensure that we are moving in the right direction.
All right. On this note, I'd like to thank you, Wale Abe, for coming on the program. Wale Abe is the Secretary for Markets Dealers Association. And we also want to thank our viewers for also spending time with us on the show. Thank you for watching. I am Bolaji Akinwale.